In this video, we're going to summarize the Math 1 lesson that's titled, May I Have More, Please? This is a Solidify Understanding task. The purpose of this lesson is for students to solidify their understanding of how to write and solve inequalities. Elvira, the cafeteria manager, has to be careful with her spending and manages the cafeteria so that she can serve the best food at the lowest cost. To do this, Elvira keeps good records and analyzes all of her budgets. The students love to put ranch dressing on everything, so Elvira needs to keep plenty in stock. The students eat about 2.25 gallons of ranch each day. Elvira started the school year with 130 gallons of ranch dressing. She needs to have at least 20 gallons left when she reorders to have enough in stock until the new order comes. For how many days will her ranch dressing supply last before she needs to reorder? So write and solve an inequality that models this situation. Then describe in words the quantities that would work in this situation and write your answer in both interval and set notation. So let's start with identifying the question that we need to answer. How many days will her ranch supply last before she needs to reorder? That's what we're focusing on here. So let's pick out some important information from the problem that'll help us answer this question. So students eat 2.25 gallons of ranch each day. That'll help us keep track of how much that she has. She started with 130 gallons, and she needs to have at least 20 gallons left when she reorders. All right, so now let's define our variable, what we're actually trying to find. So we're trying to find, I'm going to use X, for how many days will her ranch dressing supply last. So X is going to represent the days that her ranch supply dressing will last. That's what X represents. All right, now let's write and solve our inequality. So to start my inequality, I'm going to start with the amount of ranch dressing that Elvira has currently. She has 130 gallons. So from there, the ranch is going to be continually used. So we're going to subtract from 130. So she starts with 130, and then we're going to decrease 130 to keep up with how many gallons of ranch dressing that she still has. So she uses this at a rate of 2.25 gallons every day. So she has 130 gallons, and then she's losing 2.25 gallons per day. So this 2.25x represents how much is being used. And we're subtracting that from the 130 that she has. So she needs to have at least 20 gallons left when she reorders to make sure that she has enough in stock until the new order comes. So we have to keep this value right here, the amount of ranch that she currently has. We have to make sure that that stays greater than or equal to 20 gallons. All right, our next step is to solve. So when I'm solving an inequality, it's just like when I'm solving an equation. I'm going to start by looking at the x. X is first being multiplied to 2.25, and then that product is being subtracted by a positive 130. So to solve this inequality, I need to work backwards from there. So I'm going to subtract 130 on both sides of the inequality, and that gives me negative 2.25. X is greater than or equal to negative 110. My next step is to divide negative 2.25 on both sides of the inequality sign. And since I'm dividing by a negative here, I need to change my sign from greater than or equal to less than or equal to. And that is 48.8 repeating. So when I'm writing my answer here, and I need to figure out how many days she needs, X needs to represent the number of days that her ranch supply dressing will last before she needs to reorder. I'm going to need to round this down because I can't do 49 days because then her supply will run out before it actually arrives. So I have to make sure to communicate to Elvira that she needs to order at the anytime before 48 days. So anytime that X is going to be like less than or equal to 48. So when I'm writing my answer in interval and set notation, so interval notation uses parentheses and brackets. A parenthesis. Parentheses are used when you have infinity and when you have a greater than or a less than sign. Bracket is used for greater than or equal to and less than or equal to. And we'll look at several examples for how to use those, but that's in general the short version of when you use parentheses and when you use brackets. So here we can, she'll need to reorder less than or equal to 48 days. So there is a limit to that. She can't order negative days because that would have been in the past. So we'll set a limit for that. So she needs to order between 0 days, so like today, or in 48 days. So in interval notation, this is an interval. So anytime between 0 and 48, including those values, because you can order on the 48th day, or you can order on the 0 day, or anytime between that. All right, set notation. Set notation is another way to write this. So in set notation, you have a bracket, and what we say is the set of all x such that 0 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 48. So let's get back to the words that describe this situation. Elvira needs to reorder in 48 days or less to make sure that she has enough ranch for the students. Let's take a look at another example. For number 6, each student that buys school lunch pays $2.75. Cafeteria typically brings in between $1,168.75 and $1,438.25. How many students does the cafeteria usually serve? So we want to model the situation using an inequality. Let's start with identifying the important information, which is what the question is asking. So it's asking how many students does the cafeteria usually serve? And to answer this question, we need to return to these other two sentences. So each student that buys a school lunch, they pay $2.75. So that's the cost of school lunch. And the cafeteria brings in between $1,168.75 and $1,438.25. So now let's identify our variable. So x here is what we need to find, and that's the number of students that the cafeteria serves. That's what x is representing. So if I have x and I multiply it by 2.75, then that would represent the cafeteria's income, the amount of money that the cafeteria is bringing in. So we know that the income is normally between these two values. So 2.75x would be less than 1,438.25, and it would need to be greater than 1,168.75. So we can write these as two inequalities, or we could write a compound inequality, which means that we would take this 2.75x and we would put that it has to be less than 1,438.25. At the same time, it has to be greater than 1,168.75. So this is a compound inequality. It uses the two different symbols, and this means the same thing, where you have this inequality and this other inequality can be written as a compound inequality here. So to solve this, if you solve it from the compound inequality, you just have to divide 2.75 on each side of an inequality symbol. You solve these the same way. You divide 2.75 on either side of the inequality symbol. So that gives us the values of 425 is less than x, which is less than 523. So what does that mean in this situation? Since x represents the number of students the cafeteria usually serves, then the cafeteria usually serves between 425 and 523 students. So to write that in interval and set notation, let's start with interval notation. So we're between these two numbers, and I have a less than symbol and a greater than symbol, so I'm going to use parentheses. All right, 425, comma 523. And then to use set notation, 425 is less than x, which is less than 523. So the set of all x such that x is greater than 425 and less than 523. Let's summarize our different notation here because we have some new notation. So our set notation or set builder notation is listed right here with its equivalent interval notation and then the words. So for example, less than 2 would be from negative infinity to 2, any numbers from negative infinity to 2. And greater than 2, so any numbers between 2 and on into infinity. And then here we have the equal to signs, so that's where we're going to have our brackets. Here we have that x has to be less than 0 and greater than or equal to 2. So less than 0, here is we have the parenthesis because of the less than symbol with the 0. And then since it can equal to, we use the bracket. And then here we have or, and use the union symbol. So x is less than 2, so from negative infinity to 2, or x is greater than or equal to 3, so I use the bracket for the equal to 3, and then to infinity. And that is it for this video. Thank you for watching.